Welcome to XYPN Radio, where your host Alan Moore brings you into a community of fee-only financial planners who want to profitably and successfully serve Gen X and Gen Y clients. If you're ready to get the knowledge you need from leaders in your field, learn from forward-thinking advisors, and take action on your own goals, XYPN Radio is the show for you. Here's your host.
Hello and welcome to this episode of XYPN Radio. I'm your host, Alan Moore, and today I'm excited to have XYPN member Kay Dee Cole, founder of Clarity Wealth Development, on the show today. Kay Dee is a career changer into financial planning, having worked in several different industries before getting into planning. She started her planning career, however, at Edward Jones before deciding 5 years in to just start her own RIA. Just as she was getting the business going, she was diagnosed with ovarian cancer, which she said forced her to reevaluate the lifestyle business that she was building and instead transition into building more of an ensemble practice. She beat cancer and even brought on 6 new clients during the 6-month period she was going through chemotherapy treatments, which is just incredible. One of the main areas we focused on in this episode was her transition to becoming a manager and a leader of a company and how she learned to build and manage a team to take her business to the next level. She truly has an inspirational story that you're going to want to hear. You can find any of the additional resources that we mentioned during the episode at xyplanningnetwork.com/132. Also, be sure to go to xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP to join our private group just for XYPN Radio listeners. It's a community of advisors we've all been looking for that's there to provide support when we need it the most. Best of all, it's free. I encourage you to check it out. Again, that's xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP. Without further ado, here is my interview with Kay Dee. Hey, Kay Dee, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for being on.
Thank you for having me.
So I believe, I'm trying to remember when Maddie had mentioned you, but I believe y'all had a phone call recently or something, and she was like, you have to have Kay Dee on. Anytime I get an enthusiastic recommendation from Maddie, I know we've got to get something scheduled. So thank you for taking the time. If you wouldn't mind, give me and listeners just a quick overview of sort of your business, where it stands today, and then we'll sort of, dig into the details of how you got here as we go.
Sure. So I currently have been an independent RIA for 7 years. I now have 2 advisors, and we manage about 580 accounts and manage just over 67 million in assets under management. I'm located in Corrales, Oregon, and I've been an advisor for 12 years, but I've been independent for 7.
Okay. So you started your business after you'd been in the industry about 5 years then?
Yep.
So you have 2 advisors. Do you have any other staff at your firm?
I do. Currently I have a operations manager, and next week I have a new receptionist starting. And then I have a gal who's training to become a CFP and taking the test in March, who is kind of just shadowing me part-time right now. And then we'll figure out where she lands after she passes her test.
Okay. So you have 2 full-time advisors, this part-time young lady that's going to be becoming a CFP, and then 2, it sounds operations manager and receptionist. So sort of,
right.
I'm doing the math in my head. So 6 of you total, 5.5, if you will, with a part-timer.
Right. Yes.
Awesome. Okay. So you said 580 accounts. How many clients is that?
So when I was going back through trying to figure out households, I think we're around 215 households. I am still trying to figure out a better way to track households, but we're around 200 or so households.
Okay. Fantastic. Well, that is awesome. So you have built a pretty successful firm, I would say. And then are you primarily AUM based, or do you have sort of, what is your overall service model currently at the firm, sort of different revenue areas?
Right. So I started out primarily assets under management. I really wish there was an XY planning when I first started, because that's all I knew.
Sure.
That was the brokerage firm I came from. I didn't know how to do financial planning just by an hour. I mean, I knew I could charge an hourly rate, and I started out having an hourly rate. But through the 7 years I've been kind of developing this, I have switched my model many times on how I charge, and I'm moving more and more to the financial planning focus. I love the talk about monthly retainers, the ideas that have been coming in the last couple of years. We've really been honing in on developing that. So now we're moving away from the emphasis on assets under management and more of providing financial plans. And we just are launching our version of a monthly planning model and finding it much more satisfying and trying to get away from the assets and being just like every other advisor out there and trying to just set it up differently so that we can serve more people.
Okay. Fantastic. Well, talk me through sort of how did you come to start your own firm? So you said you started in the industry 12 years ago. Is this your first career, or did you sort of switch into this career?
No, I've been in many careers. So I was a late bloomer. I have done quite a few different things. I've worked for the government. I've owned my own business. I had a retail flower shop. I've worked on a farm. I did greenhouse work. I've been around the block as far as different types of careers. The only thing I've never done is a union job, but I don't have any plans.
Add that to your next career.
No, that's okay. I'm okay with that one. But I started in financial advising when I was 38. And I started working for Edward Jones because at the time that was my advisor. And he knew I was with the retail shop. It was not getting me where I wanted to go. And he knew I liked numbers, and I was always asking questions about investments and how do we save for retirement and how do we save and how we do this. So he invited me on to become an advisor with them, and I liked it. I really enjoyed working with clients, and I found something that I really loved doing. However, I did not like the corporate atmosphere of pushing for production numbers, and when I asked about becoming a CFP, I was told that I needed to get to a certain level before they would even think about helping me get my CFP. So being independent and stubborn, I said, well, fine, I'll figure out a different way to do it. And so I quit and did a lot of research. Well, before I quit, I actually did a lot of research on options and what I could do. And I came across the RIA model and got really excited about the fact that I could do what I've been thinking in my head is what I wanted to do, which was actually working with clients without selling them a product or having to manage their assets in order to give them financial planning advice.
Sure.
So it was good. It was a good switch.
Yeah. And, obviously we hear a lot of folks get into financial planning because of the Edward Joneses of the world and other similar companies. I don't meet very many folks that have been there their entire career. I feel like the decent churn rate, but, that's just how people find financial planning. It's because RAs, we're not big enough, I guess, as an industry or just individually to go out and really promote what we do. It's getting better and more people are hearing about, independent, that sort of thing. But so, yeah, it sounds like, I wonder, you had already had your own business in the past, so you obviously had a bit of an entrepreneurial streak in you. Do you think if Edward Jones had been more lenient or more supportive, I guess, of you getting your CFP and developing your own, financial planning firm and that sort of thing, do you think you would have stayed there or do you think ultimately you would have ended up going out on your own either way?
No, I think I would have gone out on my own either way because I soon realized that the only way to make money was selling investment products. They didn't allow for a model where you could charge somebody a planning fee. There was no talk of that ever in the future. It was all commission-based. So I knew eventually I was going to move out. And the more I talked to people, the more they said, the longer you're with a firm like that, the harder it is to leave. So I made the decision, and I had some good people I was talking to. I just found randomly, really through the internet, that were giving me great advice on how and when to move, and that sometimes it's better just to rip the Band-Aid off and go for it. So luckily I had a very supportive family that was behind that. And I did have some assets I was moving that clients had committed to saying, yes, if you move, we're with you. So that helped a lot because I wasn't just starting from zero.
Yeah. So how did you manage that being at Edward Jones? Because Edward Jones is notorious for holding on to assets when you leave. So were these just folks that said, hey, we will sign up with you if you go independent, or these were clients at Edward Jones you were able to take with you?
they were clients I was able to take with me. And again, I really researched how to do it in a way that I wouldn't, quote, be sued, or I was really careful about how I moved and left no trail or any kind of indication that I
Yeah,
was planning a move.
fair enough. It is a tough thing to do. I mean,
Yes.
and just because we all want to do right by the company that we work for, but we also want to do right by our clients, and feeling like, we found those clients and want to bring them with us, so
Right.
it can be a tough, I guess, just an overall tough transition, but certainly doable.
Yeah, and it was hard because here this girl was going off on starting this firm that nobody had heard of and didn't have a brand name behind it. And I took about a third of my clients over a period of about a year and a half, and some of them came to me about 2 years later, and it was kind of that, oh, okay, so you're gonna stick around. We'll move now.
Fair enough. So you had a decent chunk of clients just sort of waiting to be sure it worked out.
Right.
Yeah. And so how did you, I guess so 7 years ago that you truly were just sort of figuring everything out on your own at that point. How did you go through that process of doing this all on your own?
Again, it was doing internet searches, basically Google, putting in searches on how do you start a business and I got on some blogs. There were a few blogs that were pretty negative, and I think it was a bunch of guys who just had nothing else to do during the day and liked to rip apart Edward Jones and all the brokerage models. But it was interesting because on those, I did contact a couple people that had done what I was planning to do, and they were extremely helpful in giving me some advice. And like I said, I really wish XY Planning Network had been around when I started, because it would have been a heck of a lot easier. But hindsight, I did learn a lot. So I don't discount the learning process. I think it took me longer to get up to where I wanted to be, but I did have some major bumps in the road as I was building this business. So.
Yeah. So talk to me about some of those bumps. Even now being a female starting a firm in financial planning is not all that common. 7 years ago, it was even less common. Yeah. So I guess, how was that process for you, and what were some of those bumps that you experienced?
So the major bump I had was I had just started my business in the fall of 2010. My dad had been diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and he ended up passing away within 2 months after I opened my business. So those first 6 months was, I was lucky I didn't have a huge client base, and people weren't expecting me to be in my office. And I spent a lot of time dealing with my dad and helping my mom and all those health issues. So it was kind of a slow start out of the gate. And when I look back at it, it was, again, one of those learning moments of, when I have clients coming in dealing with that same issue, I know exactly what they're going through. And then in 2012, so it was November again. I don't think October, November seemed to be if I can get through those months, I know I'm going to have a good year.
Yeah, well, we're through it now, yeah. So 2018 is looking good.
Yeah, I'm good so far. And November 2012, I was diagnosed with ovarian cancer.
Oh my goodness.
That was a hit because I was still completely by myself. I had no help whatsoever. I was kind of lucky in the sense I did find a good office space that we actually bought the building because it was run down, and my husband was a general contractor, so we rebuilt it, which saved us some money and ended up being one of the best decisions I made. But in 2012, when I got hit with ovarian cancer, I had to call a friend of mine and say, hey, I need help. I need somebody to get my mail, answer phones, and let me know who I need to call back, who was important. I did contact another advisor in town he worked with a brokerage, but he's kind of independent. And I asked him if he would step in if I needed it. And he was more than willing to step up and do that, which was a big help to me. And I had surgery at the end of November and started chemo within 3 weeks. And so that probably was the biggest wake-up call I had, because I realized that although I was building a lifestyle practice, I realized that, there are some times in life where you just don't expect things to happen. And it kind of kicked me into gear of figuring out, okay, am I building this business for my clients or am I building it for me? And I went through a lot of thinking through what I wanted to do. At the time, I was concentrating on my health and getting better, and I was determined to beat the chemo. But I really didn't know if I had a year to live or 5 years, or if I was going to be in the business anymore. I was making plans, wills. Is there somebody that could buy my business? What could I do for clients to make sure? So the thing I decided to do was just be really upfront with all my clients about what was happening. So in a series of emails and phone calls, I let everybody know what was happening, that when I would be in the office, because I had 2 weeks of chemo and then a week off. And I was coming into the office that week I was off for about 5-6 hours. So I worked the entire time I was going through this. And I'm glad I did. It really helped me have something normal in my life. But it was difficult because there is a such thing as chemo brain.
Oh my goodness. I cannot imagine.
Yeah, I had a very foggy brain sometimes. So it took longer to do some things. But I was still meeting with new prospects, which surprised some people. And I was right up front with them, telling them what I was going through, because obviously they could tell something was wrong when I had no hair and my face was just pure white. You just don't look healthy. And I actually ended up bringing in 6 new clients over that 6 months that I was going through all that.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I was shocked. And they've been some of the best clients I've ever had. And I think they saw that I was really trying to make it, if something had happened to me, I had some contingency plans. But to this day, they're still my core good clients that I go to when I need help or something. And I'm very thankful that they did come on board, because I'm not sure I would have if I'd walked into an office with somebody looking like they were not going to be around in a year.
Yeah, that's an incredible, what an incredible 6 to 12 months. So you said you were undergoing chemo treatment for 6 months?
Yeah.
Goodness, I cannot imagine. And it's interesting because that you continue to work, because that was going to be my question, was did you just sort of shut down new clients coming in and that sort of thing? But it sounds like you just went ahead and that may have actually provided some stability for you, just something to do, instead of getting, sitting at home and just sort of waiting it out kind of thing.
Yeah, that was the worst, because daytime TV is not what it's cracked up to be. I don't know. These people, couch potato people, I'm not sure. I just went nuts staying home. And it's probably I do come from a family of kind of workaholics, and I may be labeled that. But I do have a balance. I did learn to have a balance between home life and work life. And both my husband and I both own our own businesses, and we're both kind of in that entrepreneurial vein. But I did learn a lot about balancing that too.
Yeah. So talk to me about that balance, because, you all of a sudden, your time is no longer unlimited. You don't have all day to work on the business. So how did you find a balance between, being able to continue to even build the business? I was just thinking just even run the business, much less build it, plus being able to take care of yourself, because that's a lot of time, in hospital, at the hospital and that sort of thing.
Well, I do have to give a shout out to my mom. She was extremely supportive when I was going through my chemo weeks and helping me at home when I needed it. But, the nice thing with technology nowadays, I could answer emails when I was up to it. And the only thing I couldn't do in that first week was really drive, because you really are out of it. So I wasn't driving, but she would literally drive me down to the office for a couple hours while she did errands and let me kind of do some things in the office. And I did work from home a lot. So I did have a part-time friend coming in, spending about 2 or 3 hours every other day, making sure, collecting the mail, doing the things that you physically have to do when you have an office. But I did do a lot of stuff from home. I did return client phone calls. In fact, I had some clients telling me, don't call me, don't email me. It can wait.
It kind of helps to put things in perspective on what's really important when you have a relationship with your client. I mean, if it was just a transactional customer relationship, they don't care what you're going through. But this is different, and it's a different type of business in the relationship that we have with our clients, which is awesome.
Yes. And I would say today I do have a lot of people who read my website and know I've been through cancer and chemo, and they do come in because they know I know what it's like and how it feels.
So is that sort of becoming a focus with the firm? Are you just naturally attracting folks that are going through some of those types of situations?
Yeah, I think it's a natural attraction. I'm not going out and actually recruiting or trying to recruit people like that. It just, they read my story and they instantly have a connection. Yeah.
So you said that you started off, the intention was a lifestyle practice, and then obviously life happens. And it sounds like sort of forced you to reevaluate or be sure that that's, really the direction you wanted to go. So what changes did you make through that process, just in terms of how the business was going to operate? I mean, you now have a team. So does that mean it's no longer a lifestyle practice, or does that just mean it's a more, stable lifestyle practice?
No, I'm moving to an ensemble practice. I mean, I struggled with that decision for about 2 years. And then when I brought in an advisor, he's actually in Portland. And when I brought him on to kind of help and become more of a team atmosphere, it dawned on me that that's what I wanted to do. And I struggled with whether I wanted to be a planner or actually a business owner. But when I really look at it, I think I can build my business and eventually maybe hire someone to run it. Because my whole focus and my passion is doing the financial planning with clients. But I think I'm learning that I can still do that with those clients that need that more practice CFP. But by bringing other people on and training them, they can handle a lot of these clients that we have without me. And I like that because it all of a sudden creates a business that can be here if I disappeared. I never say hit by a bus anymore. I just say if I disappeared, my clients would be taken care of. The business will still operate. It'll be on, hopefully running long past my tenure as being actively involved. And it did take a lot of soul searching to figure out that's what I wanted to do.
So how do you define lifestyle practice, and then how do you define ensemble? Since, sometimes we don't always mean the same thing. Right. So how are you defining that for your practice, so listeners sort of get the idea of what you're looking at?
I guess what I consider a lifestyle practice is one where you're working and building a business that fits with your balance in your life, and it's more focused on, the business is more focused with you rather than a team. And to me, an ensemble means that if I'm not around, the business is still completely going the way we originally set it up, and it's changing as it goes. And it doesn't matter if I'm here or not.
Okay. So basically the business survives you,
right,
essentially, not being there. Now, this is why I want to ask a question, because some advisors define ensemble and silos in terms of the broader firm. So it's a multi-advisor firm, and ensemble is, clients are the clients of the firm, and silo is more almost a franchise, if you will. Like the clients are the clients of the advisor. So how are you set up? Are clients the clients of the firm, and they're sort of being served by, several different people, or are each of your two lead advisors plus yourself sort of, you have your client base and your focus, and they consider you to be the advisor?
So we're transitioning out of the silo into the ensemble. We were set up that way. So the two advisors, we each have our own client base and we had our own fees, but we're moving away from that. And we're starting to collaborate more and bringing each other in with clients. Because he's in Portland and I'm here in Corvallis, it's about 100 miles between the two of us. So we still, right now, are working in our silos. However, as we're bringing in new clients, we're trying to create that more ensemble practice. So we'll be shifting, and it's going well so far. And, we talk about the other advisor all the time as our backup, and here he is. And the gal that I just brought in part-time that's trained to become a CFP. She is working with me on clients, and they will be clients of the firm, not just the advisor.
Okay. So yeah, I've never been through that transition, but it sounds difficult, honestly, because that's not, as entrepreneurs, I feel, or maybe this is just me, but like when I make a decision like, hey, we're going ensemble, I want it done today. Like all clients are now clients of the firm, get over it. Like every, 2 advisors in every meeting and let's collaborate. Like that's not realistic, and so it sounds like, is that a pretty difficult transition, just not only for the firm, but also for the client to make that transition? Or is it just something that takes time?
I think it takes time. And I don't think the clients really think about it, whether there's one person in on a meeting or 2. They don't seem to be phased either way. I know the clients that I have worked with personally before anybody came on here, yes, they see me as their advisor and would be probably a little miffed if I said, well, now so-and-so is your main contact. So I still remain the main contact on those, but it doesn't mean that I can't bring in other people to collaborate. Todd is doing a lot of some of the investment modeling and investments, and I give him complete credit for that. I talk about everybody when we're in meetings. So the clients are seeing it as a team, and that's what I had a client event, and I introduced everybody and said, we're all working together to give you better service, to bring you a better client model. And most clients don't even think about it.
Yeah, they're just, as long as they're getting served and they're getting what they paid for, then they're happy, right, essentially.
Right. The other thing I think they see too is that there is somebody here, whether or not I am or not, that can help them. So as long as they know they can get their answers and help, it's actually been a blessing in the fact that I think we're bringing in more clients now than we ever were because there is that team atmosphere.
So do you feel like now your associate advisors could step in and actually run a meeting for one of your clients? Or are you still, you still have to be there for now, actually managing the meeting?
For now, I still have to be there. But I think when there's littler things, I'm seeing it already happening where if they need money or they need some help with getting online or a statement, they're not coming to me anymore. They're actually talking to my staff and realizing that they don't need to talk to me every single time. So it's slowly happening. And after a while, I think there's the major review sessions. Yes, I probably will have to be there until they get more and more comfortable with the associate advisors.
And we sort of walked through this with XY Planning Network when we first started. Members would email me and Maddie everything. And over time, they're sort of built up this awareness that like Alan doesn't know.
Yes, exactly.
There comes a point where, if someone calls you and they're like, hey, I need $10,000 on my account, like, oh, all right, well, I'm just going to have to ask someone how to get that done. Because, just as you grow, you stop, you stop doing those tasks regularly. And so you sort of, forget how to actually do it. But there are just people that are better at answering questions in the firm just about different topics.
Yeah. And I think that's one thing I've learned through a lot of webinars that you guys have put on and talking to different people, reading blogs is I'm purposely hiring certain people for positions because they have talent, those things. So my operations manager, she's fantastic with technical paperwork. I haven't opened an account in 6 months now, and I'm worried I'm going to forget. And actually, I've had clients come in and talk to my staff, and I'm back in my office, and I'm thinking, well, they didn't even want to say hi.
Great. When that moment where you're like, well, I want to do fun stuff too. Yeah. I feel that way every now and then, and I have to kick myself. Yeah, it's the evolution of a business owner as you go from, it just being you and doing everything to sort of handing things off. So how has that transition been? Because you said, that you want it to become a business or continue to be a business and live beyond you. And it sounds like you don't really, being CEO and just managing the business and not meeting with clients isn't really what you're interested in. So how do you foresee that transition of, being the owner, but not necessarily being the person who runs the business.
That's the interesting part. I am starting to enjoy some of the running the business part. I didn't think I would, but I'm actually I think the creative side of me and we can make this business better, but I have more time to do it now. So it's actually working out fine. Now, someday I may decide that I need to bring in somebody who really does run it 100% of the time. Right now, I can I've been shifting more of my responsibilities to other people. And that's been giving me more time to really concentrate on how we want to build the business model. I've gone to some FPA things about training and some XY Planning Network webinars on getting your people on board and setting up a training program, which I never thought about before. I was always one of those people that you come on, here's your job description, make sure you do it, and don't bother me unless you have a problem. But that's completely changed for me because I know that's not a good way to bring in people and get them up on board.
Yeah. And, the first couple of hires, that's what you do. Because generally you are hiring out of desperation.
Right. Yep.
We rarely make those first couple of hires, 3 months before we really need them. And Maddie is my classic example of that. She, employee number one, she got hired, I think I was writing a job description at 3:00 in the morning because I couldn't get everything done.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I have to have her. And thank goodness she made it through because essentially, she just woke up one day to a computer at her house and log into the CRM. And I was like, okay, I need help. We have gotten better, but we've gotten better because we actually have team members who are really good at that stuff. Creating a 90-day onboarding plan is not my gift. That's a real struggle for me. We have folks in-house now, though, that is what they're great at is, structuring out training plans and that sort of thing, which again is the nice thing about scaling and growing is just that you get more varied expertise at the firm, which is cool. So, but yeah, I think it's really interesting and you make a great point, or this is a point I hope listeners hear. And that is that, there was a time maybe where running the business and working on the business didn't sound like fun. Being the advisor was really what intrigued you and really what drew you. But the more you do it, the more fun it gets.
Right.
And I do hear a lot of young planners that say like, I do not want to run a business. Like I just want it to be me. Only want to be a financial planner. No way could I ever see not being a planner. But, some of us actually do enjoy this whole thing of like running a business.
Right.
It doesn't mean you have to enjoy every single day-to-day operational piece. And there you can hire operations folks for that stuff. Some, it is fun for some of us. I'm sure, it's not fun for others, and it can be. So it's okay to change,
right?
And to evolve, I guess is the point that I'm trying to make there.
Yeah. And I think you get kind of in your mindset that you get on this track of, well, I can only do this. And then when you start handing off projects and things to other people, all of a sudden it's, hey, now I'm free to do this. I've got this stack folder of ideas that I have stuffed things into the folder and have never pulled anything out and really seriously worked on it. So now I'm finding, okay, now I've got an hour. I can pull that file back out and say, this was a great idea, or this was a horrible idea, and toss it. And that's been liberating.
Yeah. And I agree with you that it's so hard as an entrepreneur to hand off that first task, right? Because there are just things that we assume no one else can do but us. And listeners have heard me say this before, but the one thing I remember, Kitsis and I sat down around XY Planning Network and hiring, and what does Alan need to do? What does Michael need to do? What does Maddie need to do? And all this. And I remember the one thing I would never hand off was sales. No one could sell XYPN membership like me. And how wrong I was. Thank goodness we now have Stacy and her new associate actually will be starting here in a couple weeks to do that, because quite frankly, she's better at it than I am. And by a wide margin is better, and so that was really good for me. I got to a point where I had to hand it off because of time. And once I saw her work, she was better than me within 30 days, and here I am like arrogantly, like it's going to take 2 years for her to be able to take on calls, and, within 30 days, she handled every single intro call and didn't need me anymore. And I was like, all right, well, apparently I'm not as necessary as I thought, which for me was a really good learning experience on how, as a business owner, my arrogance stopped me from hiring as fast as I should have. We should have had her on the team 6 months earlier, but But anyway, so now I have learned to stop saying I'm the only one who can do stuff, because there's somebody that is better at every piece of the business than I am.
Yeah. And I think that's really important to remember is I am learning things from new people coming on that have a whole different perspective of how I've done things in the past, which I thought was working great. I'm bringing in new clients. There's nothing wrong with my system. And then they point something out and I change, and just a couple of ways I say things or how I explain things. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, this is so much easier. So it's good. I've been in the same boat, and by bringing people in and giving them jobs to do, and then I'm trying to build a culture of when a mistake is made, it's we don't care that you made a mistake. It's that you acknowledge it and that we figure out how to make it better. And because the last thing I want to do is have a staff member make a mistake and feel like they can't say anything because I'm going to get angry or mad or something like that. Because that was my biggest fear with client service is, oh my gosh, a couple times something happened where they didn't get back to a client right away. And if that was me, I would have gotten back to them right away. And then thinking, wait, no. You didn't always get back to clients right away. In fact, you're getting too many clients to the point where you're not getting back to them as fast. So, it's realizing some of that stuff and admitting to that, yeah, this team thing is actually a good thing.
Yeah, I've started to sort of follow. I don't know. I don't think I came up with this. I think it came from a book, but I've now embraced it. And I've just seen this with pretty much all of our team members. And that's this sort of 50-40-10 rule that I have in my head. And that is, if we hire a really great person that is better at doing their job than I am, and I think of Stacy, Jen doing our marketing, like I can't possibly even begin to do their job anymore, right? Like they are so much better at what they do that I cannot micromanage them because they are better than I am at their job. So that's one thing, is just hire people that are really great at what they do. And when they do, I find that decisions that get made are somewhere in this like 50-40-10 ratio. So 50% of the decisions that our team makes is the exact same decision I would make. So they make a decision, I say, yep, that's what I would have done. Probably 40% of the time, it is a different decision than I would have made, but it is still the right decision, which is a really hard group, because that's where we get caught, right? That's where we're like, no, that's wrong. Right. And it's like, no, it's not wrong. It's just different. 10% of the time, we'll just say, and this 10% is going down over time because this is where you train, and that 10% are decisions get made that I feel the need to step in and say, hey, we need to undo that and do something different. And quite honestly, the 50% is easy, right? Because it's like, hey, that's what I would have done. Fantastic. Right. The 10%, is the training opportunity, but the 40% is a learning opportunity for me as a manager to say, hey, look, you know what? I would have done it a different way, and maybe we talk about it, but I trust you that this was the way you wanted to go, because there's no black and white. There's no right answers in management.
Right.
A client calls and asks for money, like you get them the money. That's a no-brainer. But there are plenty of other situations. So
yeah.
So had you ever managed folks before your firm, like when you had the flower shop or anything? Were you managing people?
I was, and I made some really horrible decisions. So I learned a lot. But it was a small little shop. It wasn't like I only had 1 or 2 full-time people, and then during the holiday season. But I did learn you had to be organized and you had to set expectations. And if you said you were going to do something, you have to do it. There was a lot of times, well, if we can do this, then I might get you this. And, I really couldn't afford a lot of pay raises, but I started learning that, maybe just giving a day off paid or perks or things, but that business was feast or famine around holidays, and it was really difficult to manage people.
So how has that transition been for you? Because this is an area I need to start asking listeners more questions about this. So I'll just start with you. You get to be my guinea pig. And that is just like, how has it been learning how to manage? And like, what have been some of the trial and errors of going from, you do everything to managing a team?
Well, I think it really comes down to that whole piece about when I started. It's kind of like you said, I had a lot of arrogance and I can run this. I can do it my way. This is the best way. Nobody can do it as good as I can. to realizing, no, by bringing people in, it's actually making the business better. But it is difficult managing people. And that's when I originally started, I really didn't want a lot of employees, the added workload with payroll. But when I first started bringing employees on, I leased employees. So it didn't have that burden of actually doing payroll. I paid a little extra for the employees, but it saved me some time.
Was that through like a temp agent or like a placement agent?
Yep.
Oh, very cool. I've never done that before.
Yeah, it's a challenge sometimes, but the nice thing is if you don't like someone, you just let them go. I heard a term that was hire slow, fire fast. I think that's been through an XYPN somewhere.
Yes, that is so true.
And it didn't dawn on me until I just hired a receptionist at the beginning of November, and she lasted 5 days and then never showed up again. And it was like, what? I thought people needed jobs. So, it is a challenge. I mean, managing employees is definitely something that either you need to learn how to do, or I try to listen to podcasts as much as I can. My commute's only 10 minutes, so I don't have a lot of time to listen to a podcast on a commute, but I try to listen to them when I do take longer trips or reading a lot. But managing people definitely is a challenge.
And I would say hiring well, if there is one skill set to have as a business owner, especially one that's growing a business like you are, hiring well is really critical. Yes. I mean, that is it.
Yep.
Because ultimately the way your firm runs and how you take care of clients, all of that will be 100% driven by the people that you bring in. And recognizing one of the harder things for me when especially when we first started out was evaluating skill set versus culture fit. And saying like, no, this person has an amazing skill set. They'd be a great fit for the firm, or, therefore they're going to be a great fit for the business. And in reality is what I have learned is bringing in someone who's an amazing culture fit in your firm and then teaching them the skills is so much better than bringing in someone who has the skills and trying to teach them the culture.
Yes.
Because ultimately, I can't make a jerk a nice person.
Right.
Like it's just never going to happen. So like either we get along or we don't. And so anyway, hiring, like I said, hire slow, fire fast, because if you hire correctly, you won't have to fire people. Correct. If you spend a lot of time on that side, obviously someone doesn't show up for work, then they're done. So
yeah, it worked out well. I didn't get the satisfaction of firing her though, because she just never showed up again. You're right.
Yeah, work ethic is something. My dad was military, and you just show up for work. Like you do what you say you're going to do, which is not always the case. Now in professional services, it's usually a little bit better, but yeah, it is what it is.
Yeah. At least I didn't order a bunch of name tags and marketing material with their name on it, so that was a good thing.
This is true.
The other thing I've always had in my head too, when I was before I got into this business, was that your business is always as good as your lowest denominator. So, if you're lacking in certain things, you need to figure out how to bring someone in that's better at it. And, I've kind of taken that to heart as I look at who I'm bringing on and where they can fill in and what their skill set is. And I have gone through the process of going through client interviews and advertising, but I think my best people have been people who've either come to me looking for a job or through my network of people I know in town that say, hey, so-and-so's looking for a job. They'd be a great fit for your business.
Right. Yeah. The referral candidates are typically the best. We have found that as well, that, ultimately advertising is great and that's how we find some folks, but just knowing someone. And probably half of our team came from referrals or just meeting people and going, you know what, you're awesome.
Yeah.
Like, and the cool thing of a growing business, I know for anybody that's out there that's solo, you don't have this flexibility. Hiring is a really big freaking deal.
Yep.
As you grow, every hire makes it easier to hire more people just because you get that bigger scale and more opportunity. But there will come a time where you come across someone and you're like, you're badass. Like, I'm going to bring you into the firm and I'm not exactly sure what to do with you yet.
Yeah.
Make a job for you. And that's a really cool feeling because then you're bringing in the right people. Getting the right people on the bus is what Jim Collins would say from Good to Great. So talk to me a little bit about sort of the growth of your firm, because you have grown a just very successful firm in the 7 years, and including the fact that you went through some of the worst hardships you could possibly imagine while just in life, much less when starting and running a business. So where is your growth coming from? Where are you seeing these clients Like, how are they finding you, or how are you finding them?
Well, it's interesting because that's one thing we've been working on, is trying to track where people are coming from. And I have a surprising amount that come from my website. And part of it is I did have a local guy I knew who did my website. It wasn't a company that did it, but luckily he was good at it. And part of it was just putting, personal stories on it, the videos. When we started doing videos on our website, I think part of that has been a really good thing in the fact that people watch those videos. And then when they come into the office, they already know how I talk, who I am, what I look like.
Mm.
And I think there's more of a trust factor that's built in before they even walk in the door. Because that's one of the biggest things in this business, is building that trust. And there's a lot of people out there who've been burned by advisors or have mistrust in the business or investing, and I think I really saw a big uptick in the amount of new prospects coming in when I'd started doing those videos.
That's interesting, because very few advisors are successful with video from what I've seen, just because they can be very expensive. So are you doing like professional cut videos, or are these just webcam videos of you talking about different topics? Like what are the videos?
So I did do the professional route. And luckily I got in on a guy who was just getting started. And I did get, I think, a pretty decent deal.
Sure.
But I also spent the money on it because I knew I wasn't, again, this is one of the things, I'm not good at that kind of stuff. And me trying to take a selfie video would be horrendous. So I decided, no, I'm going to hire someone who can come in here and do kind of like what you're doing, interview me basically.
Mm-hmm.
Because a script or anything like that just doesn't come off as being personable. So I had a gentleman come in, do some of the videos, and we put them out. It's been a while, so we're going to have to update as we've been adding people in. But I've just found that the money spent on that has been well worth the time and money.
That's good to know. So this is not, it sounds like this wasn't someone in financial planning.
No.
This was just a local person that you found that could do video work for you.
Right.
And folks can go to your website to check these out. But so the videos are more, so they are professional cuts. So you just did sort of a series of them. Are you talking like, here's what a Roth IRA is? Or is it more, here's who I am, who I serve, and what we do?
Both. And then I have worked with Jill Addison on some of the whiteboard videos. So I've got some of those as my marketing and sending out my newsletter every month. I put videos here and there, or Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn, for the how-tos or what things are. But I do have some of the personal videos of who we are, what we do, and what to expect.
That's great to know. I haven't talked to a lot of advisors that have had success with videos. So it's great to know that has been something that's been positive for you. I mean, and we know video really does help your SEO. So it makes your website much more findable. Google likes it when we invest in videos, just in terms of overall search results. So now, do you have sort of a defined niche market that you're targeting, or is it a little more broad based than that?
I wish I could say I did, but it's pretty broad based, and partially because I never started that way. It was basically anybody could fog a mirror. Yeah, come in, be my client. And I think that was a liberating thing too. This last couple of years, where I realized that I don't have to take every client that walks in the door. You almost get a sixth sense after a while of who is a good fit and who isn't. But I also don't have true minimums. We are developing financial plans that are a lower cost, but I see those as learning opportunities for new advisors. And I don't want to turn those people away who are really seeking help and are willing to pay for it. So I have a low cost option and they are kind of one-off people sometimes, but I've found that a lot of those people are so thrilled with just getting some knowledge and advice that they tell their friends, and then their friends come in, and I brought in $1 million client because of that. They didn't have any money when they originally met with me, but I helped them figure out a couple things. I've never seen them back, and kind of in a way I'm glad, because they were also husband and wife that were having problems and issues and couldn't agree on anything. So I knew it wouldn't be a good client in the future.
Sure.
But they led me to a client that was $1 million client is one of my best clients. And so you just never know. But I will say I'm starting. So as I'm bringing advisors in, we are having that advisor concentrate on a niche. So I'm concentrating more on women going through transition and business entrepreneurs. And Todd, he's working with, he has clients he likes to work with that are also kind of that business, and he's looking at a specific kind of client and getting more into the retirement income. So he's looking at more of the retired folks. And then Kim, that we're bringing in part-time, she was one that she's a past educator. She likes the education piece. So working with the younger clients, she is younger. So we're trying to move that direction.
Makes sense. And it sounds like your service model is evolving as well, which
Yes.
we started talking about earlier on. So what is sort of, talk to me about the evolution of the service model and sort of where you're expecting it to go from here.
Yeah, and that's where I would tell people, don't feel bad in changing your mind, because I've changed it many times since I started. In fact, I've kept track of all my fee schedules, and it's a mess in the beginning. And I was one of those people who had the imposter syndrome, where I didn't feel when I first started, oh, who's going to pay me, $2,000 to do a financial plan? Nobody's going to pay me to do that. So it was that negative self-talk piece that I had to work through and realize that no, there are people who will pay that. And those are the people you want to work with, because they're the ones that are seeking that advice and are more to actually do what you tell them to do. So it's taken me, so I hope I make people feel better, because it's taken me 6 years to figure out that my fee schedule really was not set up the way it should have been. And what I had done in the past was I set up an AUM model that was the tiered model. So if you had 500,000 and then you moved into 501,000, you switched to a lower percentage and on the whole 500,000. And I realized that by doing that, I was shorting myself. If somebody just went over $10 on that band, I was shorting myself like $1,000 on my fees. So they were getting the same service for a lot less. And it just dawned on me that, that's really, I've probably lost a lot of revenue doing it that way.
Gotcha.
So now I've moved to a blended model where they pay a certain percentage on the first 250,000, then they pay another a lower percentage, but it's after that 250,000. And here I am, a numbers person, and in fact, Todd's one of the ones that pointed it out to me, and it was like, oh, you're right. What am I doing? And then moving more towards the planning, when I first started, I was giving people a financial overview for $350, and spending probably, depending on the person, some of them I didn't spend as much time, but a lot of them I was spending more than 2 or 3 hours on.
Right.
And it dawned on me, it's whoa, gosh, you're too cheap. And so I've been slowly raising my prices every year, and I keep thinking, oh my gosh, who's going to pay this? And then sure enough, more clients are coming in and willing to pay that money. So it's taken me a long time to realize that asking for truly what it's costing you to run your business is a good thing. I mean, I've done very well. I've never had a negative year. I've always had a net profit. But I think back in the last couple of years, it's like, shoot, I could have hired people earlier. I could have invested more in video. I could have done this. I could have done that.
Right.
So,
yeah, it's a great point that we've been hammering on it more and more lately. And I don't know if it's correlated or if there's a causation here, but we are starting to see more and more, particularly XYPN members, raising their fees. I mean, I've heard of some advisors doubling their fees because they've realized how much they're undercharging, and they're not losing clients. Right. Because clients know the value of what we do. And I think that's the biggest thing. Is sometimes I think clients are more confident in the value that we provide than we are. And maybe it is a conversation with some of those clients that are friends, to be able to say, hey, how do you value this? Not monetarily and say like, I will pay X dollars for this, but how do you value financial planning? What's the value I'm providing? I mean, and sometimes that's what we need as advisors and business owners to feel like, to feel more confident, I guess, in what we're doing. We actually have a XYPN positive in our Slack channel. It's a channel about positive comments people make about XY Planning Network to us, because sometimes those negative comments or self-doubt creep up, and it's just nice to be able to go back and look and be like, you know what? No, we are providing a valuable service and it's okay to charge for it and that sort of thing. So I don't know if, having the folder of positives, whether it's electronic or physical, is a good thing.
Yeah. And I think it's an evolution, like you said. And one of the things I've also done is it used to be I would bring clients in who I would manage their assets and I wouldn't charge them an extra planning fee. Well, I've shifted that completely around this last year. And thanks to XY Planning Network and other people, I realized, no, I have to charge them for upfront for a financial planning fee and then get the plan in place, because then I can manage their assets even better, knowing I always walk them through goals and figuring out what they needed to do. But now it's like, no, you have to do one of our initial plans and then we'll manage your assets after that. And this is what the fee is when we're managing the assets. But, my business name is Clarity Wealth Development. And back when I started, the clarity part was because my dad going through Alzheimer's, and it's just like, hey, that's a good name for a business, is having clarity in things really makes a big difference. And the wealth development, I just didn't want to name myself wealth management because I wanted to develop wealth, not just manage it. And when I was going through all that and now getting where I am now, it's taken me a little bit longer to get around to figuring out the cost. And I'm probably going to change it again next year.
Oh, sure.
But I'm getting there. And I think as it's going to be a good thing going forward, because we are more focused on the planning part. And the asset piece is just, an extra service we can offer. And if we're not managing our assets, we're still getting paid for our time if they've got accounts that we can't manage.
Now, do you have plans to make changes next year, or do you think it will just, naturally happen that the prices will sort of go up, or your fees will go up over time?
Yeah, we just went through the process of figuring out our fees for 2018, and they have gone up. And I'm taking to heart the suggestion of putting pricing on my website. I haven't done that. Part of it was, I don't want my competition to know what I'm charging.
And then you realize they can just look at your ADV.
Exactly.
What will be your fee structure for 2018? What's the
plan?
So
we've developed a model of 3 menu items. So people have a choice of 3 planning models to do. One is, again, just keeping a basic planning model. We're charging $850 for that. All that is really coming up with a net worth statement and some suggestions on what they could do going forward to make some of their goals, whether they need to up savings, do a Roth IRA, maybe shift some things around, check their beneficiary. So it's really a basic plan with an option of adding on a annual agreement on that with a monthly fee. And then that's the first. And then the second one is more of a comprehensive, it's not a comprehensive plan completely. It's more of, okay, you have a couple issues that you really want to focus in on and dig deeper. So that's what we're going to do in that middle plan. And then the third one is a comprehensive plan. And each one then has a monthly fee associated with it going forward. We haven't done this yet. We're just implementing this. So I can't tell you what the success rate, maybe in a year I can tell you what's happened. But, that's what we're going to do this next year.
Cool. Okay. Yeah, and like I said, it's okay, and the longer you're in business to continue to evolve, and eventually, you'll get all your clients up to the same fee structure and eco, because it can cause a little bit of confusion internally if you have a bunch of different fee structures for a bunch of different clients. It naturally evolves though over time, but that's exciting that and I commend you for being willing to test run new things and to try new things and not just get stuck, because you said something, you sort of glossed over it about wealth development versus wealth management. And I would venture to say that is probably a core differentiator between your firm and the vast majority of financial planning firms out there, is that you're looking at working with clients in developing wealth, which is just a totally different client base than advisors that focus on $1 million minimums and therefore are doing wealth management. They're not necessarily helping them build wealth. They're helping them not lose their wealth, which is a huge difference in just the types of clients that you're able to work with and who you enjoy working with.
Yeah, I find for me, it's the satisfaction of seeing someone improve their situation and get to where they want to go is what I enjoy the most.
So as we're coming to a close with this interview, I'll ask you the final question, which is, if there's one piece of advice that you wish you could go back and give your younger self, maybe this was the younger self that was going to be opening a firm or going through cancer treatment, but if there's one thing you wish you could go back and tell yourself, one piece of advice, what do you think that piece of advice would be?
The main advice I would give myself is it's okay to make mistakes, and it's okay not to be perfect, and it's okay to change how you're doing things. I think I put off some changes way too long, and I didn't want to change things because I thought, oh, this is working. But I've learned that by changing and trying new things, you're not admitting that you were wrong in the first place. You're just figuring out a better way to do things. I
think that's a really good way of putting that. They say perfection is the death of progress. And it really is tough. I mean, for folks that are perfectionists, it can be tough, but also, like I said, being, that just because you make a change doesn't make you wrong and stupid or anything. Right. It just means you're learning, and continuing to evolve because, either you're growing and evolving and learning or you're not. And, if you're not, then business is going to fade. So, well, Kay Dee, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your story and really your inspirational story and path to the success that you found. So thank you so much for being on the show.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.
Be sure to join our VIP community at xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP to hang out with other XYPN radio listeners, ask questions for future mailbag episodes with myself and Kickass, and to finally find a community of like-minded financial advisors. Thanks so much for joining me today. We'll see you next time.
You're not alone, and you're not crazy. It's scary starting, building, and growing your own financial planning firm. And that's why we put together a free private community just for you, the Cutting Edge Financial Planner. Go to xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP or text XYPN Radio to 33344 and join a network of thousands ready to change the lives of Gen X and Gen Y clients.